where's it gone? That's it. Let me just check that I'm doing mute and okay. Um, so thanks everybody and welcome to the Midnight Stars AA meeting, where we're going to do it's called the 12-step express. So it's a workshop. So workshop usually means that we are going to do some work. Just a little briefly, while we have a couple more people coming in, I'll just qualify. Uh, if I don't pick up a drink by April 22nd, it will be 31 years since I last found it necessary to drink, for which I'm really grateful. Uh, I first was introduced to alcohol when I was a child. It was acceptable on both sides of the family. Parents were doctors, and it was just par for the course. Uh, Glass of wine with dinner, a little shandy on special occasions, and as you grew a little older, maybe some beer, light beer. And by the time I was 16, I was just drinking beer, other stuff, and also got into other substances. I drank for only about 12 years. And in those 12 years, I went through 6 or 7 jobs, a broken engagement, an enlarged liver, a motorcycle accident which almost killed me, a failed suicide attempt, and countless unsuccessful attempts to try to control my drinking or to try to drink in control. And that's really what it used to be like. What happened was I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 22. You people spoke a strange language. I did not understand what you said. And you all old. I was 22. And you all really old people. Like,
Rohit, can you make your sound a little bit loud? Somebody is saying low voice. So please,
okay, is that better?
thank you.
Is that better?
Rajana, it is better. Rajana is better. It's better for us. It's okay.
All right. We'll send her the recording after the thing. Sorry, Rachna. Uh, so that's really what it used to be like. I came to AA. I was 22. I did not understand what you people said. And I'm sure somebody was talking about a solution. I just didn't hear it. I heard a lot of unhelpful stuff like meeting makers make it and go for 90 meetings and stand on your head in the corner. I don't know. I did not find AA helpful at all. But when I came back in 1990, I met a fellow who became my first sponsor, and he actually took me through the steps very rapidly. He had me do step 1, 2, and 3 the first night that he met me, and I started writing my fourth step that night. In less than 4 months, I was done with my steps. I never drank again. And a year later, I was ready to kill myself because I would go to AA meetings. I didn't hear too much about the solution. This was in India. And, you know, I just wasn't getting it. I was unhappy. And by the grace of God, my sister sent me a big book from the USA. We didn't have big books in India at that time. And an auntie in Australia sent me some tapes of some old timers sharing the process of doing the steps, sharing the experience. And it completely changed my life. I found the solution that AA was talking about, and my life changed. I got my act together. 3 or 4 years later, I got a chance to move to the United States. I went to school, I studied, I worked in the drug and alcohol business for over 25 years. And a couple of years ago, I got an opportunity to return to India and do some work on a part time basis. So it's been quite an adventure. Uh, I try to go to at least a meeting a day if I can. I'm doing more meetings now with the advent of COVID and Zoom than I have in the last 15 or 20 years. I was averaging 2 meetings a week. So that's really what it was like. So when we talk about 12 step express, okay, uh, just a little bit of history. AA was started by two fellas, Bill W. and Dr. Bob S. Now, Bill was admitted to the town's hospital on the 11th of December 1934. The 11th, 12th, and 13th, he spent 3 days in detox, or whatever detox was at that time. The next 3 days, 14th, 15th, and 16th of December, Bill's friend Abby T came to the hospital and he did the Oxford Group 6 step program with Bill. So, in 3 days, Bill went through the program of action, admitting defeat, taking an inventory, agreeing to make amends, and stating his willingness to believe in a higher power. And that was it, 3 days. On the 17th of December, Bill had an interaction with a higher power, Bill's hot flash, his white light experience. And on the 18th of December, 1934, he left the hospital and never drank again. So he spent 3 days in detox, 3 days doing the steps, one day having a spiritual experience, and he never drank again. Did seeing God save Bill from staying sober? No. Because if you have your big book with you, if you look at page 15, on page 15 of the big book, um, on the second paragraph, Bill says he was not too well at the time. And he says, self pity and resentment nearly drove me back to drink. But I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. And so, just because he was Bill W., the founder of AA, and just because he had this white light experience in the hospital, that was not a cure for his alcoholism. He still had to do the steps and continue to do the steps for the rest of his life. 5 or 6 months later, he was in Akron, Ohio on a business trip which failed. And he realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. That guy turned out to be Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob was already a member of the Oxford group but had been unable to stay sober. But when Bill met Bob and gave him Dr. Silkworth's explanation of alcoholism, the illness, Bob began to pursue the spiritual remedy. Now, he met Bob on Mother's Day in 1935, which was May the 13th. And Dr. Bob was working full time. So he'd come home in the evening, sit down with Bill, and they would step work. It took Bob about 3 weeks or 21 days to get through the steps. He refused to do step 8, 9. He refused to make his amends. And as the result, Dr. Bob went and had a massive slip. He had his last drink on the 10th of June, and that day is counted as the foundation day of AA. So it took one co founder 3 days to do the steps. It took another co founder 3 weeks to do the steps. You know, I live in Long Island, New York, and I've met so many old timers in the States with, 50, 55, 60 years of sobriety. And all of them, those really old timers, they talk about how uh, step work was the solution to alcoholism, and they were encouraged to go through the steps as soon as possible so that they could get well and help others. In today's COVID times, if tomorrow the headlines say there's a cure for COVID or they found something that'll get us well in 3 days or 12 days, you think I'm going to be sitting around waiting? No, no, let other people go. Not at all. I'd be rushing out to buy that medication and get myself vaccinated. But somewhere along the line, and I don't know where and how, it's probably just, evolution. We got the idea that we should take your time and don't rush into doing the steps. And there's no need to be doing all this stuff at any speed at all. So, having come into recovery, I kept getting asked questions by people, uh, you know, when can I start doing the steps? And so, in today's workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to do actually only step 1 to step 5. And if there's a co host, I hope they're admitting people in the waiting room because uh, that's something that we're trying to do. So, if you can all see, I'm
Yes.
sharing a screen here, and I hope that's big enough. Uh, here we go. By the way, this will all be, if you got this message from somewhere, we will share this PDF later tonight. So you don't have to take furious and copious notes, it's all there. So here's a timetable for taking the steps. Let's see what the founders of AA said, the people who actually wrote this book. When can I take step one? You got to wait 90 days. You got to wait 1 year. You got to wait till your sponsor tells you to take it. Let's see what the big book says. On page 58, it says, if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. That's what it says. So, uh, oh, I lost the. Can you guys see the thing? I lost it somewhere.
Yeah.
No, we can't see.
Okay. Can you see it
Yeah.
now? Okay. I'm so sorry. Apologize. So, if you have decided you want what we have, then you're ready to take certain steps. So, if there's somebody here today for their very first AA meeting and they don't know anything about AA, and at the end of this meeting they say, wow, you know what, I think I have this problem, I want what these guys have, you're ready. That's what the guy said. When can I take step two? Page 47 says, as soon as a person can say he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. That's it. As soon as I can say that I do believe or I'm willing to believe. Step three. When can I take step three? When I'm convinced. Convinced of what? Of step one and two. That I'm powerless, my life is unmanageable, that my thinking is insane where it comes to alcohol, and a higher power can help me. When can I take step four? It says next. If I was standing in line at the pharmacy to get some meds, and Vinay was in front of me, and he gets his meds and leaves, and then the clerk says, next. Next is me. I'm not going to be standing there and telling everybody else, no, no, you please go ahead. I'm just going to practice spirituality this morning. Next is right now. And that's what they say in step four. Next, we launched on a course of vigorous action. And finally, step five, which we'll do today also, is when we decide who's to hear our story, when our fourth step is written, we waste no time. We don't hang on to it and wait to see if the sponsor is not free. Go find some guy in the park who can't hear and read your fourth step out to him. Find some old timer. Find somebody who's willing to listen, as long as it's not about them and they're not going to hurt it. So what I'm going to do, we're having a little fun. I've put together some questions. I'll share a little bit of my experience, and the answers are outlined in the big book, and we'll share this with you at the end of this meeting. So step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So when can I take step one? And what the big book says on page 58, like we just said, if you've decided you want what we have. When I came in, I was 28. I was broke. I was single. I was unemployed. I had $3 in savings in the bank, and I was sleeping on my grandmother's couch. You bet I wanted what you guys had. You guys were clean shaven. You wore nice clothes. There was a glow about your eyes. You were laughing. I wanted that. And they said, okay, do the steps. So here are some questions for me to find out. So step one says we admitted we were powerless. How do I know whether I'm powerless? And on page 44 of the big book, AA asks us two very simple questions. It says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if while drinking you have little control, you're probably alcoholic. So I reflected on those two questions. If I honestly wanted to, I can't tell you the number of Monday mornings I woke up broke, sick, sometimes unemployed, sometimes in strange places, usually, covered in vomit. Usually there was urine involved. Hopefully it was my own. And I would say to myself, that's it. I'm never doing this again, only to do it again. Sometimes by 11 o'clock in the morning, sometimes by that Thursday. Or if while drinking, I have little control. I cannot tell you the thousands of times I would sincerely promise anyone who was with me, honey, I'm only going to have 2 drinks today. And I honestly meant it. There was only going to have 2 drinks. Never happened. It didn't mean I got wasted every time. Maybe I'd have 3. Maybe I'd have 4. Maybe I had a wonderful evening and I did not make a public spectacle of myself, but I had lost control. And that's what the question was on page 44. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot stop entirely off while drinking, you have little control. You're probably alcoholic. So, where can I find a good description of the alcoholic? You got to remember in 1990, I was 28 and everybody else, my sponsor was 36. Everybody else was in their late 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, I'm going to be 60 in a couple of months. But I mean, I was just trying to find a friendly girl on a Friday night, and these old guys are talking about prayer and meditation. Who the heck's interested in that? So, and I mean, there were a lot of low bottom drunks around at that time. How do I find a description of whether I'm like this person? And this is a wonderful exercise. If you're new in AA, after this meeting, you go to page 108 to 110, and they describe 4 kinds of alcoholics, 4 kinds of husbands. It's the chapter to the wives. And I'm not going to go through all the 4 types, but I am going to read out a few lines which I identified with. And, you know, I would strongly urge you to do this. I do this when people ask me to sponsor them. I said, look, I don't know if you have this problem or not. Go to this page and let's see how many of these questions. 108, I sat down, these were yes or no. You know, uh, whoops. I may be only a heavy drinker. No, I was far more than heavy. My drinking may be constant or heavy only on certain occasions, or definitely constant or heavy on every occasion I could get away with. Perhaps I spent too much on money on liquor. Check. It may be slowing me up mentally and physically. Check. I don't see it. Yep, everybody else did. I'm a source of embarrassment to my friends, relatives, business associates. Check. I'm positive I can handle my liquor. I'm not like you lightweights. Check. My drinking is necessary in my business. I worked in the film business. Check. I was definitely insulted if I was called an alcoholic. And it says the world is full of people like this. And I said yes to all these things. And then AA drops the bomb and it says, some will moderate or stop altogether, and some will not. I could not moderate and I could not stop. And here's the bomb: of those who keep on, a good number will become true alcoholics after a while. Oh my God. And then I looked at husband number 2, and it was alcoholic number 2, and that was me, unable to stay on the water wagon, getting entirely out of hand, trying with or without friends' cooperation to get better, beginning to lose friends, business is suffering, jobs are going. I'm worried that my drinking's not normal. I'm starting to drink in the morning. I'm remorseful. Wow. How did they know so much about me in 1935, which is 36 years before I was born? It's incredible. Went to husband number 3. This guy he's much worse. But I already started to appear at hospitals with broken bones and heads, and I didn't appear at sanitariums, but I appeared at police stations. And then on page 110, we went to husband number 4. Drinks on the way home from hospital. I got to tell you, 3 months before I got sober, I was admitted to a hospital in a coma caused by a bike accident under the influence. And I left the hospital to consume alcohol again. So, good description of the alcoholic. I could identify with all 4 guys. So, a guy like me, I'm not convinced. So, I need to find methods to find out whether I can control my drinking or not. And if you go to page 31 of the big book, they have some fantastic, I mean, it's not a very complete list, but they have some wonderful things over there. Drinking beer only, you know, never drinking in the morning, never drinking alone, drinking only at parties, drinking. There's a whole list. And I could add another 10 things that were not on the list. They switched from scotch to brandy. I switched from alcohol to cocaine and from pot to something else. And wow. Yeah, I tried all those methods. Ad infinitum, they said. Is there any other method to see if I can stop or control? And what I love about AA is they gave me the freedom to fail. I'm lucky I didn't die with all this freedom, but AA gave me the freedom to fail. And they said, okay, we'll give you 3 challenges, Roy. On page 33 at the bottom of the page, it says, certain drinkers would be greatly insulted at their inability to stop. You called me an alcoholic, I was insulted, but I could not stop. On page 34, they said, okay, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, don't come to our meetings, don't go to therapy, don't use medication, just stop. Use your willpower. Stop for 1 year. That's all. Just stop for 1 year. Never made it. The most I ever did was 2 months, and I only did 2 months because of smoking pot. And then they gave me the third challenge on page 31. They said, step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try it more than once. It won't take you long for you to decide. You got to remember, now I'm not recommending that anybody go over to the nearest bodega and try some controlled drink. Yo, I listened to this speaker and he was saying, go. No, no, no. It's 1939. There were only 100 people sober on the planet using this method. 800 inquiries came in. They mailed out 800 books. How do you 12 step somebody who's in Florida when you live in New York? 1939, they didn't have the technological advantages we have now. So they put all these methods in for the reader to find out for themselves whether they were one of us. Okay? And despite doing all these things, why have all these methods to stop failed? And now they come to the medical opinion, and in the doctor's opinion on page XXV or Roman numeral 28, Dr. William Silkworth says, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy and the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class, never occurs in the average temperate drinker, and cannot use it in any form at all. Now I knew what an allergy was. It was an abnormal reaction to any food, beverage, or substance. Some of you here know my sister. She lives in Vancouver and she's allergic to fish. If she eats fish, she breaks out in a rash. She can't wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I live in Vancouver. I haven't had fish for 40 years. I'm just going to have fish. Nothing's going to happen. But she does not need to go for meetings of Fish Eaters Anonymous. She does not have to say the serenity prayer, oh God, keep me away from fish. When she was 15 years old, she started getting a weird rash, got checked out at the doctor, said, you're allergic to fish. You got to stop. She hasn't eaten fish again. My brother's wife is lactose intolerant. She stays away from milk products. My grandmother's allergic to cats. She'll sneeze like heck if she sees them. She's future ex-wife. My grandmother stays away from. That's an allergy. And I don't know what a phenomenon was. A phenomenon just meant there was no explanation. So the doctor says all these methods I've tried have failed because of this physical reaction when I consume alcohol. What is the medical solution? And here's the bad news. In 1939, Dr. Silkworth wrote on page XXX of the big book, it has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. And on page 31 of the big book, it says, physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this. It hasn't done so yet. And that was written in 1939. And we are in 2021. And science hasn't accomplished it yet. And from those of you who are listening in from the US and other parts of the world, you're in the past, I'm in the future, I'm in tomorrow. And they still haven't accomplished it yet. So that's pretty bad news. Okay. So what about willpower? Why can't I use willpower? What the big book says on page 24. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Their so called willpower becomes practically non existent. I can only share my experience. I don't have a choice. If there was not a power between me and alcohol, I would drink. I mean, I get very impressed. Sometimes at AA meetings, I hear people say, I choose not to drink today. I said, maybe this guy's in the wrong meeting because if you're an alcoholic, you've lost the power of choice. At least I've lost my power of choice. I can choose whether to eat vegetarian or whether to eat chicken or meat or fish. When it comes to booze, unless there's a power greater than me, I am going to drink. I don't have that choice. So if I have got all this information, the doctor, why do I keep drinking after the doctor's given me this information? And back on that same page, uh, it says the main problem of the alcoholic, page 23, centers in the mind rather than the body. And what is the main problem? On the same page, AA tells me it's an obsession that somehow, someday, I'll beat the game. There's got to be some way I can drink as much as I drank last night, but not wake up the way I woke up this morning. There's got to be some way I can do that and still wake up with a few bucks in my pocket, know where I am, in a nice, comfortable bed with, a friendly lady with me. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Never happens. It's all in my dreams because I go out and lose control. And then on page 24, you know, if these thoughts occur, they're hazy and threadbare. I think if I put my hand on the hot stove, I won't get burnt this time. And finally, on page 30, the idea that somehow, someday, I will control and enjoy my drinking. Control and enjoy is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. And what is the abnormality? When I drink, my body craves. When my sister eats fish, she gets a rash. When I drink, my body craves more and more. That's my abnormality. Now, why is this so important that they talked about the mental state? Because on page 35, it says the mental state that precedes the relapse into alcoholism, into alcohol drinking, is the crux of the problem. And what causes the mental state? Thank God the authors had this pinned down so straight. On page 52 of the big book, they talk about the eight bedevilments. They all, I like to call them the eight unmanageables. And they asked me these eight questions. And in 1990, when I answered them the first time, we were having trouble with personal relationships. Heck, I had no personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. 28, sick, broke, unemployed, single, living on grandmother's couch, boo hoo hoo, full of fear, miserable and depressed, $3 in the bank, felt completely useless, totally unhappy, and couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Check, 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 check. So when these things happen, when I'm in the state of emotional unmanageability, and it says that affects my mental state, okay? What does the unmanageability do to me? And Dr. Silkwood told us in the doctor's opinion, it makes me restless, irritable, and discontented. And when I am RID or restless, irritable, discontented, what does my mind say? My mind says, have a drink, Roy. You'll feel better. Now, the most valuable part of this book was that this information I just shared was not given to me by a bunch of drunks. It was given by a medical doctor. And this guy was no lightweight. He was a graduate of Princeton University, got his medical degree from Bellevue, New York Hospital's Bellevue Medical Center, ran a small private rehab for wealthy people up on the Upper West Side. Dr. Silkworth worked with over 50,000 people before he died. 2 years before the big book was published, in 1937, he wrote an article to the American Medical Association talking about his views on alcoholism. And it is this doctor who says, A, there's a physical reaction that happens to some people who drink. Their body craves alcohol. And B, they can't stop and they keep going back because they are emotionally unmanageable, which makes them restless, irritable, and discontent. And for some reason, The mind says, go and drink again. How often will I keep doing this? Not surprising that I will pursue this into the gates of insanity or death on page 23, and then the death knell. Dr. Dr. Silkworth just lowers the guillotine on page XXIX, Roman numeral 29, and he says, after they have succumbed to the obsession again, as so many do, they pass through and the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to do this again. And unless I can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope in my recovery. I cannot tell you the number of times I came out of a spree swearing I would never do this again, only to do it again. So, is there any hope? And once again, it's Dr. Silkworth, not AA. It's Dr. Silkworth who says, and on the other hand, strange as this may seem for those who do not understand, once this psychic change or mental change has taken place, the very same person who seemed doomed, who seemed so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly, suddenly finds himself, not after 90 days, but suddenly finds himself easily able to overcome the desire to drink. Wow. What do you need to do? Follow a few simple rules. And what are these rules? The rules are the 12 steps. You can call them suggestions, you can call them directions. As far as I'm concerned, you know, if that's going to save my life, I'm going to take it. So what so if I want what you have, when can I start taking the steps? Some people will say wait a while, some people will say rush into it. I like what the authors, the first 100 members, wrote in the big book on page 95. They said give him a book, ask him to read the book, and then he needs to decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded by you or his family or his friends. He's got to decide for himself. So if I'm convinced from my own drinking experience that I have no power because when I drink, I can't quit. I have no control because I always drink more than I want to. If I'm convinced that my life is unmanageable, then I am mentally and physically powerless over alcohol. How do the unmanageability questions affect me now? I'm 30 years, 11 months, and 1 week sober. Surely my life must be manageable now. But if I look at those 8 questions, am I having trouble with personal relationships? You bet. I'm here in India. My son's in the USA. I'm paying for his bloody phone. Every time he wants money, he suddenly calls me. But he can't pick up the phone when I want to talk to him. Yeah, I'm having trouble with personal relationships. We can't control our emotional natures. Yeah, I get a little sad. I get a little anxious. I'm not miserable and depressed, but I'm definitely a little worried, man. I'm almost 60 and, work isn't going that great. I don't know when I'll qualify for Social Security, if any will be left by the time I get there. Couldn't make a living. My place of business has been closed since July last year. Feeling of uselessness? No, I feel useful today. I'm helping people. Full of fear? I'm not full of fear, but I still have some anxiety. We are unhappy. Well, I'm not happy that I haven't seen my son. August 15th will be July 29th is the last time I saw him. August 15th he left was the last time. I haven't seen him for almost 2 years. Can't seem to be of help to other. Yeah, I am. So today, 30 years, 11 months, 1 week sober, I just answered 6 of the 8 unmanageable questions, which means my life will always be unmanageable by me, which means I will always need some other manager in my life, opening the door to step 2. But how exactly does the willing person take step 1 if I'm convinced that I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable? Page 30. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. And this is the first step in recovery. Fully concede. And I sat down and I looked back at my 12 years of drinking. I look back at the number of times I lost control. I look back at the number of times I tried to stop and didn't. I look back at the jobs I lost, the relationships I screwed up, the promises I broken, the hopes that I shattered, and the constant failure to just drink like a normal person. And I admitted to my innermost self, and I took step one. So now, how long do I need to wait to take step two? And in step two, it says, when can I take step two? Okay, we needed to ask ourselves on page 47 just one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe there's a power greater than myself? And it says, as soon as a person can say that he does believe or is willing to believe that there's a power greater than himself, he's on his way. But why do I need a power greater than myself? I mean, okay, I've admitted that I'm powerless over alcohol, and what do I need now? I did not have a good relationship with God and with higher powers and with various religions. So why do I need a higher power? Page 45 of the big book tells me. Lack of power. That was our problem. Okay. You know, lack of power, that was a dilemma. We had to find a power greater than ourselves. Obviously. Because my power had failed. Had I been able to either stop drinking or control my drinking, I would never be a member of AA. But I've proved to myself repeatedly that I'm powerless. And if I don't have the power, I need to find some kind of other higher power. Why can't I use a mental defense? Why do I need to have a higher power come and, remove these thoughts from my head? Page 24. We covered this. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Page 24. When this sort of thinking is fully established in a person with alcoholic tendencies, okay, he's going to die unless he's locked up, or he will get permanently insane. What sort of thinking? Obsessive. There's got to be some way I'll beat the game. I will control and enjoy it. And this time, when I put my hand in the fire, I will not get burnt. That's the kind of thinking we are talking about. That seems hopeless. Alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense on page 43 against the first drink. This defense must come from a higher power. My parents came from two different religions. I didn't know which was the right one. The night we buried my father, I was 16 years old and I got sexually molested by the priest that said the services. And now I come to AA and the meetings are in churches, and you guys are saying prayers at the beginning and prayers at the end, and God this, God that, turn it over, God will forgive. Whoa, dude. Okay, I admit I have a drinking problem. I don't have anything to do with God. I'm an agnostic. Seems hopeless. And on page 44, the first 100 members of AA said it isn't so difficult. More than half of us were of exactly that type. Wow, 50%, 50 of the first 100 members were either atheists or agnostics, and they agreed with every word in this book. They agreed for the need for a higher power. Wow. So, where and how am I going to find a power? And again on page 45, it says that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power which will solve your problem. Ah, but where and how am I going to find this power? And they said, much to our relief, on page 46, we discovered we do not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to establish a contact. Now, this line over here, this actually saved me, because I was giving my sponsor all these excuses about religion and this. And he said, boss, do you have any friends left? And I said, yeah. He said, what's so great about your friends? I said, well, they forgive all my crap. They bail me out. They lend me money. They hook me up. They find me jobs. He said, write all those qualities down. He said, if by some accident there's actually a God in the universe, wouldn't you like God to have those qualities? I said, yeah, that I can do. He said, that's exactly what AA has just said. On page 47, at the top of the page, it says, when therefore we speak to you of God, Roy, we mean your own conception of God. So my conception of God, God should be like my friends. Loving, kind, forgiving, generous, happy, forgiving. You can call God whatever you want. You can call God, Jesus, Allah, Shiva, Buddha, Mahavir, group of drunks, good orderly direction, get out of debt, go out dancing, good old daddy, whatever. It's your concept. A just gave me permission. They said, much to my relief, I did not need to consider the conception of either of my two grandmothers. My own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient. Wow, I don't have to explain that to anybody. It's my conception. I know I just explained it to you. Today, I like to consider myself a USB, universal spiritual believer, because I plug into many different belief sources and I gather strength from that. You know, what if I don't want to be willing? It has been proven time and time again, at least in my own story. My grandmother sent me to AA at age 22. I was not willing. And what happened to me? And they've described it so beautifully. Okay, on page 48, I'm just going to read that out. Though some of us resisted, we found no great, we found no great, I need my glasses, difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open minded on spiritual matters as we did on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was the great persuader and beat us into a state of reasonableness. Oh, you're not willing to listen, Roy? Bam, lose two jobs. You're not willing to listen, lose three girlfriends. You're not willing to listen, get a demotion. You're not willing to listen, get arrested. You're not willing to listen, have an accident. Alcohol beat me into a state of reasonableness. And finally, I threw up my hands and said, okay, I'll do it. But I want proof, become a skeptic. And I loved it. On page 50, they said, on one proposition, however, okay, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them believes in and has gained access to a power greater than themselves. And these are worldly people. And they found that as soon as they were able to be willing to believe, to take an attitude towards that higher power and do some actions, they got results. Where do I see the results? At meetings. I meet people who are sober, and all of them are sharing their experience with me. This is how I got sober. So, where can I find God? Churches, temples, mosques, synagogues? How do I take step 2, page 47? One question: do I now believe, or am I willing to believe there's a power greater than myself? That's it. As soon as I can say I'm willing to believe, I'm on my way. And that brings me to step 3. How long do I need to, where we say, how it works, and we end with the ABCs. But the next two lines, next two words are so important. Say, being convinced, we were at step 3. They took the doctor's opinion and 4 chapters of the big book and 60 pages to convince me that I'm powerless, that my life is unmanageable, that my thinking is insane or less than whole, and that some kind of higher power can help me. Before I could believe in an invisible higher power, I had to believe in visible lower powers, and that was the members of the group. So, what is step 3? It is that I decided to turn my will and life over to the care of God as we understood Him. What do I mean by that? The first requirement is that any life run on self will can hardly be a success. So, this caused a lot of confusion for me in AA because I did not hear the word turn. I heard people saying hand over your life to God, hand over your life to God. I'm currently right now in India. Some of you are coming to visit and you happen to show up at my place. Some of you might say, hey, Roy, we're going out sightseeing for a couple of days. We would like to turn over our passports and our traveler's checks and our Rolex watches to you for safekeeping while we are out sightseeing. That's turning it over. You're not giving me all your goodies to do with as I will, to spend it and invest it, to blow it or whatever. It's turning it over. And I looked at those words. What is turn? Turn is to go in a different direction. The direction I was going on was destruction and death. And now I'm going in a different direction, one of life. What is a decision? A decision is the conclusion of the mind. It comes from the Latin word incisse, to cut. I'm cutting away the old thinking. What is the old thinking? I will beat the game. I will control and enjoy. I won't get drunk this time. That was my old thinking. And I'm making that cut. It's a conclusion that my thinking was wrong. I'm going to move my thinking in a new direction. Will and life. What is will? Will is a choice made in the mind. I will go to this bloody 12-step express meeting and see what all the hoo-ha is about. That is will. A conclusion on the mind, of the mind, based on evidence that you've received, information that you've received. But unless you actually take some action, and that's what life is. A life is a series of actions based on our will. I will stay up tonight and do this workshop. I will say yes to Shibu when he asked me to do this workshop. And because I said yes, that was will, I took action. I sat up for a couple of hours and I put together this worksheets to share with you guys after this meeting. And then what is self? Now, self, when people say, tell me a little bit about yourself, we usually tell people about the three areas of our life that everyone has: a survival instinct, to survive, I need money; a social instinct, recognition; and a sex instinct. These are not something that I have to be taught. If I'm walking on the street and someone picks up a stone and throws it at me, I'm going to duck. I don't have to be told to duck. The first time I landed in the USA, what is my social instinct? I looked around the terminal for somebody who looked like me and sounded like me. I went and sidled up to people who were brown skinned and trying to figure out whether they're speaking a Spanish language or an Indian sounding language. A social instinct. And my sex instinct. The first time I got aware of my sexuality, I didn't have to say, oh, mom, what do I need to do? I knew what to do. Nobody had to teach me that. That's an instinct. And what they are saying is that any life run on self will, self is instincts, will is thinking, is not going to be a success because I'm going to bump into other people and that's going to cause problems. And what are the problems it causes? What is the root of my problem? It's a selfish, self centered. I want what I want when I want it, and I want it now. And in doing that, I'm going to step on people's toes, and then they're going to retaliate. I don't like it when they retaliate. I get angry. I plan revenge. It usually does not come off well, and I land in trouble again, and I drink. So, what should I do with this selfishness? Big Book says above everything, we alcoholic must, M-U-S-T, be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Dude, I want to live. How do I get rid of it? God makes it possible. Oh, thank God I took step 2. Thank God I'm willing to believe in my conception of a higher power, because step 3 says my conception, God, as I understand God, is going to make it possible. And there's no way of doing that without God's help. So what do I have to do? This is the how and why of it. At the bottom of page 62, it says, first of all, we quit playing God. It didn't work. Oh, I don't play God. I'm said, really, Roy? Go back to page 60, where they give the example of the actor. And instead of the word actor, you put the word Roy. Roy is like an actor who's running around trying to do, you go here and you do this and you do that. And if only you guys do all that, life would be great and I would be happy. Show does not come off at planned. I get pissed, I get angry. You guys don't care, you're not alcoholics. I go out drinking. Wow. So how exactly do I take step 3? So many people I'm not saying they're wrong, but many people are the impression that saying the third step prayer is actually taking step 3. It's not. The instructions for taking step 3 at the bottom of page 62 of the big book. And if you have your big book, you look at that and it says, next we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, it's a decision. God is going to be our director, not a suggester. He's the principal, we're the agents, he's the father, we're the children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant charge. So, for me to take step 3, first of all, I need to be convinced that I'm powerless, unmanageable, and crazy, that a higher power can restore me to sanity, solve my problem. I need to be convinced that I'm willing to believe in a higher power. I need to be convinced that it was my selfishness that caused the problem. And if that is so, then I need to make this decision that God is going to be in charge from now on. If I make that decision, okay, God, you're in charge. I'm not going to be the director anymore. Then the famous third step promises come into effect on page 63. When we sincerely took such a position, we were reborn. And my favorite one in the first paragraph is, you know, we felt new power flow in, we enjoyed peace of mind, we discovered we could face life successfully, we became conscious of his presence, and we lose our fear. Oh my God, I've gone from powerlessness to power. I've gone from insanity to peace of mind. I've gone from unmanageability to facing life successfully. I've gone from willing to believe to conscious of his presence, and I'm beginning to lose my fear. Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. And who can I do this step with? And back in 1939, men, women, everybody went for the same meeting. The families did this. You read some of the old stories of the first edition. It's in the other A book where they put all the stories. Not Language of the Heart, Experience, Strength, and Hope. The book with all the taken out stories. And you see the stories of the old timers. The whole family went for the meetings. They all did the steps together. And therefore, it made sense to do your third step with your wife or your best friend or a spiritual advisor because they were doing the step as well. Together, they were, turning their wills and lives over to their higher power. And then you have the famous third step prayer, you know, and they said the wording was very optional. So my third step prayer sounds very different. I don't use the one in the big book. I said, "Hi, God, this is Roy checking in. And today I want money, power, fame, and sex. So you give me what I need. And what do you think I should have? Please remove my difficulties and give me someone to help." That's my third step prayer. Why do I say that? Because on page 63, it says the wording was optional. Any other prayers I can use, you can use any other prayers you want. There are prayers all over the big book. There are prayers in several different books. There are prayers in all your religions. You can get it. There's lots. The AA is completely unrestricted when it comes to prayer. Now there's just a decision. Is there any action involved with step 3? Yes, there is. And one of the stories on page 420, it says, acceptance is the key to my relationship with God. I never sit on my duff waiting for Him to tell me what to do. I take the action, leave the results up to God. So if I don't have a job, I put my resume together, I send out, go for interviews. Whatever job I get, that's the will of God for me. And that was my share on step 3. Okay, surely we can take a break now. How long do I need to wait before I do step 4? And the next for the COVID vaccination, and the nurse said next. We would not get spiritual. No, no, we are AA members. Let the next 90 people go before. Heck, get out of the way, man. I want the shot before you. At least that's me. I'm still a selfish alcoholic. I'm not going to be generous. By the way, I just had my second shot yesterday. So it says, next we launch on a course of vigorous action. First step of which is personal house cleaning. So I got to look within now. What are you going to look at? They're talking about resentment. I didn't know what resentment meant. It sounded very fancy. It comes from a Latin word and a French word. It just means feeling. And means to feel again. So they gave us instructions for dealing with resentments. They gave us 3 columns on page 65. Bill W. shared his own inventory with us. He said, I'm pissed off at Mr. Brown. Why am I pissed off? His attention to my wife. Told my wife about my mistress and may get my job at the office. And Bill gave us 7 areas of life to look at: self esteem, ambitions, security means money, personal relations, sex relations, pride, and fear. So I took that example, and if you can see this, here's what I did. I just drew some lines on the page. There are no lines in the big book. This is my own personal experience, okay? And see, Bill W., Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, my wife. I took the 3 columns. Whom am I pissed off at? Why am I pissed off? And what got affected? It's that simple. And then, for the purpose of this exercise, I added 2 of my own resentments, which I'll share with you guys. And I wrote, I'm resentful at my dad. Why? He died when I was 16 and he abandoned me. And I looked at the areas that AA talked about. Did it affect my self esteem? Of course. I felt terrible. Whenever we went out for social functions, everybody has 2 parents. I got one. Did it affect my money? Sure. But my mom said, I'm a single mom now. I'm not giving you pocket money. Go out, get a job. So I got my first job at age 16. Did it affect my ambitions? Of course. My ambition was, to hang out with my dad and, learn all sorts of good stuff from him. Ambitions affected. Did it affect my personal relations? Yeah, because now my mom and my grandmother were in charge. The women were running the house, and it ticked me off no end. Did it affect my sex relations? Of course. I was a 16-year-old kid in India where you have no classes on sex education. I had no clue what to do with whom and how and why. And my dad wasn't there, so I'm sure I made some mistakes. Did it affect my pride? Yeah, we'd go out to social functions and school functions, and people would say, oh, my dad is the president of this, my dad is that, my dad is the other. Hey, Roy, what about your dad? My dad is dead. Affected my pride. Did it affect my fear? Yeah, my dad died of heart disease at age 48. And it's in my family, and this fear that that might happen to me. Every single area of my life was affected with this resentment. The other one, which I've written, is also true, it's personal. There was a priest. He molested me after my father's funeral. Every area of my life was affected. My self esteem, I felt like crap. My money, I had to spend thousands of dollars in therapy to get my head straightened out. My ambitions were to be safe, in the presence of a family friend that was trusted. My personal relations, nobody in the family knew I was so pissed at this guy. I couldn't tell them back in 1978. My sex relations were affected. I don't know. Why did this guy hit upon me? Was I gay? I started having unsafe, promiscuous sex in the next few years just to prove to myself. Was my pride affected? Yes. What about fear? Absolutely. That's what it was. So I took the instructions from the big book. I made a list of people, institutions, and principles with whom I was angry. I asked myself why I was angry. And I'm lazy, so I didn't keep writing self esteem like Bill W. I just wrote the short forms. You can do what you want. And we're going to WhatsApp this to you guys so you can print it out if you want to make a copy. That's the same thing, slightly different format. So once I was done with my resentment list, what do I need to do now? So it said the second part of this now was prayer. What becomes plain? Page 66. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment only leads to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permitted this, do we wasted the hours it might have squandered? I can't tell you the number of hours I've sat there with a glass in hand, boo-hooing about some crap that's happened during the day, or pissed as hell about some stuff that's happened during the day, and making all sorts of plans and plots and plans to exact vengeance. Wasted, squandered the hours that might have been worthwhile. You know, lost opportunities, lost relationships, lost financial. I mean, I can't tell you the number of things that went. What's going to happen if I hold on to these feelings? Big Book tells me with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, a personality change, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. For us, it is fatal. You know, It cuts us, the insanity, it cuts us off from the sunlight of the spirit. So even though I'm willing to believe in a higher power, even though I've made a decision to turn my thinking and my life into a different direction and try to live in a different way, if I hold on to these resentments, it is going to block me off from the life saving sunlight of the higher power in step two. So, what if my anger is justified? I mean, that priest, I mean, come on, man, I was a 16-year-old kid and he molested me on my dad's funeral. If we were to live, if we were to live, okay, we had to be free of anger. It's not a choice. We had to be. Who is this we? The first 100 people that wrote the book is not me. I'm not giving some lectures over here. This is my experience. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. And grouch is just self pity, and brainstorm is that road rage. Maybe the dubious luxury of normal men, but for us, this is poison. So, what do I realize? I realize that just like me, these people are sick, man. They also have instincts for money. They have instincts for, social recognition. They have instincts for sex, and they follow their instincts. And when they get into trouble, they don't get drunk. They work it out. I get drunk. So if they have instincts, I have instincts, and they are sick, I can't really hold that against him. What will I have to do? Here comes the action of step three. And, you know, many people are very happy with this. Page 552, pray for them, pray for them. Those are not actually the instructions in the big book. That is one person's sharing in one of the stories. Let's see what the big book says. How am I supposed to deal with the anger? I'm actually praying for me. It says on page 67, we ask God to help us show them tolerance, pity, and patience. We would cheerfully grant a sixth friend. When a person offended, we said, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful? God save me from being angry. Don't let me argue or retaliate. How can I be helpful? This whole fourth step resentment prayer is for me. And that is the self healing process. So if I take all those things from the page 67, it might sound something like this. Dear God, XYZ from the resentment list is a sick person. How can I be helpful to them? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Please help me show XYZ the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Help me avoid retaliation or argument. Give me a chance to be helpful and take a kindly and tolerant view. So you see, I discovered when I was, because you see, when I first did this, I was listening to other people's shares and everyone's to pray for them. Why do I want to pray for that son of a gun who molested me? No, I'm supposed to pray for me first. The self healing has to start. So when I started studying the big book and found this answer, I realized I had to heal first. Now, you can also use the prayer from page 552, and that's where the process of forgiveness starts. And there, dear God, higher power, please grant XYZ, good health, prosperity, happiness, and whatever you want for yourself. Sobriety, serenity, happy relationships, fast cars, hot women, fat bank balances, whatever you want, even if you don't really want it for them. And remember, they said the words are only optional. So for that priest who molested me, I wrote my own prayer. Dear God, this guy is a sick mother so and so. And God, if you choose to take him to heaven right now, I shall have no objection. That was my fourth step prayer for that guy. But, that is it. I'm done with my resentments. I've written down whom I'm pissed off at. I've prayed for myself for healing. And for some people, I've prayed for them for forgiveness. Now we come to the second part of the inventory. Now we are going to refer to our list again, just the list. We're not looking at that whole inventory. We are only looking at the list and the four instructions. Number one, look at the list. I don't know what Bill did to Mr. Jones, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, employee wife. We don't know. So I can only share my uh, fourth step. So referring to the name on the list, the name was my dad, the name was the priest. Big Book says, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we look for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self seeking, and afraid? Wow. So, putting out of my mind the wrongs my dad had done, what had I done? I lied to him, I stole his money, alcohol, cigarettes, gossiped about him, manipulated, blamed him for my failures. Where that priest was concerned, I did nothing. I was the victim. Next instruction, where was I to blame? Inventory was mine, not the other guy's. When we saw our faults, my faults are the defects that drive my behaviors. Why did I steal and lie and cheat about my dad? Why did I gossip and manipulate? Because I'm dishonest, because I'm a show off, because I'm disrespectful, because I'm full of self pity, anger, and fear. Those are my defects that drive my behaviors, that hurt other people, that cause them to retaliate, which makes me resentful, which makes me restless, irritable, and discontented, and makes me drink. And what am I going to do? What's the action? They said we admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. So, yeah, I will admit my wrongs to my sponsor in step five and to my dad in step nine. Amends would be to formally apologize, change my behavior, pay back the money. Now, my dad was dead, so I wrote a letter and read it at his grave and gave the money off to charity. What about the priest? I did nothing. I was the victim. But I did inform my sponsor of the incident, and I did seek professional therapy, and I did seek legal counsel. And now I have the courage to share about being molested at AA meetings. By my doing this, many people have come up to me privately and thanked me for sharing this because they've kept this hidden for years. You know, I didn't do this at the start when I got sober. It took me about 10 or 12 years before I started sharing this at meeting. And that deals with part two of the resentments. So, why this is so important is that, and please, these charts that you see here is just because I'm a lazy guy. This is how I wrote it. I found it made sense to just take those four sentences and make them into four columns. But from this part of the fourth step, I found out all my defects and I found out all my amends. What's the next thing I had to look at was fears. So they gave me some instructions. They said, what do I work on next? Notice the word fear. It seems to cause more trouble. And they gave me three instructions. Number one, review my fears thoroughly. What I'm afraid of, cockroaches, the dark, COVID, put them on paper. Ask ourselves why we have them. And the third instruction is to ask God to remove the fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. And I put, yeah, my dad. What is my fear? He'll find out about my lying, cheating, stealing, drinking. So I prayed to God, and this is what God told me: stop lying and cheating, be honest, and make amends. The priest, I was afraid he'll continue to assault me, use his position to affect my education. Prayed to God. The answer I got was be courageous through prayer and seek help, which I did. COVID, I'm afraid of COVID. I'm in the borderline age group. I may get sick. I may never see my son again. Pray to God. Take all medical precautions as advised. I just took my second shot yesterday and I use the mask every time I go out, which is not too often. I'm afraid of the police. They'll arrest me for drinking and driving. Pray to God. God said, stay sober, you jackass, and follow the law. The fifth one I won't go into. Now, these are all my examples. And straight out of the big book. I've not invented any of this stuff. It's all in the big book. The only thing I'm guilty of is taking those instructions straight from the big book and putting them into three columns. That is my fault. Then I put a blank column, and then after I'm done with fear, ha, you guys I know are all waiting for this. What do I work on next? We work on sex. Woohoo! Why do I need a sex inventory? Page 68. Many of us need an overhauling there. And what overhauling are we talking about? We're talking about a mental overhauling, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Page 23. The main problem is in the mind. All sexual problems start in the mind first. First, the mind wills it, then the body follows through. So I need an overhauling there. But above all, we try to be sensible. Why do I need to be sensible? because it's easy to get away from this. You know, one lot of sponsors in AA will say, oh, you can have sex with whoever you want, just don't drink. Another lot of sponsors in AA say, no, 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 you're not allowed to do anything. Become a saint. No sex till you're 10 years sober. AA says, just stay away from these people. What does AA say? It says, we want to stay out of this controversy. Okay. Why? We all have sex problems. We'll hardly be human if we didn't. And then they gave the instructions. We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done? Put it on paper and looked at it. And again, like I said, I didn't make the stuff up. I just took the directions from the big book, which the first 100 wrote, and the only thing I'm guilty of is putting them into these the the directions into columns. And here again, I have shared what now. See, they're talking about conduct. Yes, I'm in India and we're the land of the Kama Sutra, but the fourth step inventory is not about sexual positions. It's about my conduct. What was my behavior? And I gave this example. I was unfaithful to my relationship by having an affair with somebody. Who did I hurt? The lady, her husband, their kids, my girlfriend, the office we worked in. Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, bitterness, or suspicious? Yeah. The lady was jealous of my girlfriend, bitter that I don't leave my girlfriend. Her husband was suspicious. Where's the wife disappearing, coming home late? The kids were bitter that the mom is not around more often. My girlfriend was suspicious that I was doing so much overtime and not coming home with more money. And the office was suspicious that Mrs. B and I were always disappearing into the warehouse. But why did I do this? Where were we at fault? The big book asks. And I broke this down with the lady. It's not always lust, it was conceit. It was, I can get whoever I want. With Mr. B, arrogance. I can have your wife and you won't even know. So arrogant. The kid's careless. I didn't give a damn that the mom was not there to look after the kids. My girlfriend, I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend and I'm not available for her. My office, I'm dishonest. I'm stealing company time. That was my faults, my defects. What should I have done instead? The big book asked me. And it is the exact opposite of my behavior. Be respectful of other people's relationships. Don't disrupt parents, you know. Be true to my own relationships. Be honest. And that's only one of my behaviors. I went through all my conduct: selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate. And in this manner, I was able to, oops, I was able to come up with a sexual ideal. And I try to live up to it. What is the object of this inventory? Is to rub ideal. My ideal is to be in a monogamous relationship, loving relationship, okay, and to not cheat on my relationship and to try to be honest. Not always easy. My ideal is not to sleep with other people's wives and girlfriends and fiancés. You know, that's my ideal. Whatever my ideal is, I should be willing to grow towards it on page 69. Should I ask my sponsor what to do? It says in meditation, we ask God, and the right answer will come if we want it. What if I mess up again? If we fall short and we mess up, if we are not sorry, we are definitely going to drink. But if we are sorry, we will be forgiven and we'll have a chance to change our behavior. So, what kind of action can I take to prevent this? To sum up about sex on page 70, we throw ourselves harder. We throw ourselves harder into working with others. Okay, we redouble our efforts. You know, we try to work with other people. Just go and help other people. It doesn't have to be alcoholics. Because if I give in, it means heartache. Hey, but what if I'm the victim of sexual abuse? I can't believe these guys wrote this book in 1933. You know, please don't go to your sponsor. He's not a sex therapist. God has abundantly supplied this world with many fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problem to such persons. And the last part of the inventory was the harms inventory. We listed people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. There are some people, like my grandmother, they are not on my resentment, fear, or sex inventory, but I hurt her. My granny, I stole her jewels. I have to make amends. So many cab drivers, I vomited in their cabs, I didn't pay them. My amend is to stay sober and to tip the future cab drivers. So many jobs, I came in late, slouched off on work, hung over, wasted company time, made mistakes, made amends to companies that were still open, and worked properly with future employers. And that was the last part of the inventory. Okay. And having done that, now surely we can take a break. According to the big book authors, you've done step 4. Of course, you only done the examples. This is 12 step express. You actually have to do the step. So, how long should I wait before snow type? Oh, why do I need to admit my wrongs? Page 72. Best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves vital facts about their lives. Almost invariably, they got drunk. What do I need to do these inventory pages? We must be entirely means completely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. There's one school of thought in AA says you can do some parts of your resentment with some people, some parts with others. I say try and do it all with the same person. So when people slip, they say, "Oh, I did everything else in the program. I went for meetings, I made coffee, I did service, I did this, I did that. Why did I drink?" Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. And we said, we think they never told somebody else all, ALL, their life story. And why do I have to do that? Page 74. More than most people, the alcoholic lives a double life. Okay. There's one part of him that he wants the world to see. He wants a certain reputation. He wants to enjoy it. That's me. But in his heart, he really doesn't deserve it. And I do all kinds of crap while I'm sober, which I feel guilty about, which I regret, which I'm afraid people will know. And I push that deep down inside me. And that leads for more drinking. Now, thank God, there is the rest of the steps next, which shows me how to deal with this. But every time I did that in the past, do I make mistakes now? Absolutely. Do I do things that I'm ashamed of? You bet. Do I do things that I feel guilty about? All the time. But today I have the solution. There are people I can talk to, there's prayers I can do, there's actions I can take, so I can be relieved of this before I pick up a drink. So, who should I share my inventory with? Remember, written in 1939, only 100 people sober in the world. They said we think well before we do this. It might be a lawyer, it might be a doctor, a psychologist, or maybe somebody from an ordained religion. This was before there were recovered alcoholic sponsors. Now they're available all over the world. My preference is just do the step with the guy who's taking you through the steps. Should we tell them everything? Big book says we park at our pride and we go to it. Every nook and cranny of the past, telling them everything. What will I get if I do this fifth step? Once we have taken the step withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. What do I do after sharing my inventories? After sharing your inventories, you have to go home for 1 hour. There's a 1 hour meditation, and certain we have to take down a big book, open to page 59, read the first 5 steps, revise them, do them mentally, 1 hour of revision, and after that, we shall walk a free man at last. I want to thank you all for attending and for giving me an opportunity to share my experience and hope with you. Later tonight, in a few hours, we will send you the recording of this and also the PDF WhatsApp, which you can print and use for yourself. Thank you very much, Shibu. You can stop the recording